Huh?
in Montreal.
Oh wow. Okay. Because right, Ruben. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Dr. Dama said so we continue the topic of Meister Bereshis, the works of creation. And yesterday we talked about really Meister Merkava, which is more spirituality, or the Ruchnistic world. And now we talk about more the Gashmistic world. The Rambam, we talked about before you say this, Eishach Ma'amafar, fire, water, earth, and air. And this parak expands upon that more. And then the end he's going to tell us why he's telling us this whole thing is to help us cultivate love and fear of Hashem. Halacha Aleph. These four bodies, these four primary elements, which are fire, wind, water, and earth. They are the fundamentals of everything that exists under the sky, meaning under the Gagalim. The thing is, the Gagalim in the sky, the planets, etc., the Rambam says they're made of their own thing, something else. They have a different type of matter, type of Goylem. But these things on the earth, under the Gagalim, are from these four. Everything, whether it's animals, humans, birds, creepy crawler things, dog, fish, vegetation, metal, stones, or precious stones, gems, anything made for building purposes, types of stones. Comes to earth, it all comes from these four Yesodis. The Kabbalah Chazal had, it says so. This is a tradition. The Rebbe has a letter. Someone asked about the fact that today in contemporary modern physics, chemistry, there's a periodic table of different kinds of elements. That says that's something else. Those are elements that can't be broken down to smaller parts. These can be broken down. So different conversation. The Rebbe says. Okay. It comes out to everything that exists, all forms, all matters. Right? That are under the rakia, under the lowest gaga, except for these four fundamentals. Is comprised of a matter and a form, an energy, if you will, that gives it its shape, gives it its nature, gives it its content, gives it its teva, etc. Except for that, these four, each one is only has their own. Aish is only Aish, Mayim is only Mayim. But everything made from them has all four to a certain extent. The Goylem Shalhem, he's made of a Goylem and Surah. The Goylem Shalhem B'chol Be'abbas Yesodis Elu, and its matter, its physical content, is made of these four. However, the four Yesodis, the four elements, is only comprised of form and matter. Its type of form, its type of matter, is not made of multiple matters, right? So, okay, good. So in other words, again, the four Yesodis themselves, they are made of only their own surah, their own form, their own matter. We said in the Yesodis Perek that there's like a type of definitionless kind of matter, and when the surah of Aish goes with that matter, becomes the Yesod of Aish. When the surah of Mayim comes, it becomes the Yesod of Mayim. So each one of these is made of just it's only that one surah and that type of unique chaymer, that of Goylem. Things under the world are made of a composite of all these different types of four, different types of recipes of all these four Yesodis. Halacha beis. Fire and air, they are generally speaking, their nature is to go to go from, if you put them as close as you put them to the center of the earth, the nature is to go from there upward, towards the sky. The nature of water and earth is to come down from the sky down to the earth, towards the center, towards the middle of these round spheres. So the fire and air are trying to go up, and the earth and water are trying to come down to the center, whichever direction you come from. Since the rakia is around, so whichever you're going towards the middle, you're going away, you're going low, downward. Because the center of the sky is the lowest point, which is the middle of the earth. So the fact that this whole process of these four Yesodis goes in these directions, not been their consciousness, not their desire. Unlike the Galgalim, which move in their own awareness, they have a certain amount of bechira, even we said. It's a nature Hashem placed in them. Fire is hot and dry. It's the lightest of them all. Ruach is hot and it's moist, so it's a little bit lower than Aish. So water is cold and moist. The earth is cold and dry, and it's the heaviest of them all. So Vaist is that when it's extremely hot or extremely cold, it's Yavish. So extreme hot is Aish, and it's hot and dry. Extremely cold is Oretz. So it's cold and dry. But if it's not, if it's more in between, then it's moist. So Vamayim Kalamet, water is lighter than the earth. Therefore, water is above the earth. So, in other words, you have the ocean, which is above the ocean bed, which is the earth. And ruach hovers over the water, like there's the pasuk that ruach merachef al pnei hamayim. Okay. In the Moreh Nevuchim, Ram explains a little differently apparently, but this is what he says over here. Good. The Eish comment. So in other words, when Hashem created the water in its teva, so water was above the earth. Now, but the Eibush made the Eibush made that the earth should go over the water. That's why you have the islands or hovers out over the water. The Eish ruach, fire is lighter than the wind. Fine. So again, if it's dry, dry is the extremity. Extremely hot is fire. Extremely cold is earth. They're both very dry. Ruach and mayim, they're moist, they're less extreme. So hot, moist is ruach, which is less extreme than eish. And hot, cold is mayim, which is less extreme than earth. That's in between. Since the other fundamentals of building blocks of everything that exists under the sky, you might say, in the earth, you might say, turns out that everything which is made, every physical thing, every goof, every item of animals and people and wild animals and birds and fish and things that grow, stones and metal, its matter, its physical part is comprised of these four elements of Eish Chamayim Afer, each one in obviously a little different way. And there these four mix together, and it mixes. There's different recipes, how you mix it, how much you mix it, and based on that, so each one, when it comes together, when it's mixed, you can't compare how the Eish is by itself, how Ruach is by itself, or the Mayim Afer by itself. Never have anything that exists in the universe only the Yesodeo of Eish by itself. Even our physical fire is not the Yesodeo of Eish by itself. Even our physical water is not Mayim by itself. It has in it other things, yeah. It all changes, and it changes based on the way the composite, based on the constitution. And everything, physical thing, every physical item, which is comprised of these four. You have in it elements of hot, and cold and dry and moist simultaneously, and different levels based on its right. So, for example, you have fish; their bodies push more moist than, let's say, a bug, but it's not 100% water. It's not 100% not water. Right? If someone that they're more of a stronger leaning towards, even say the towards fire, like living things. That's why they have the ficha. That's why they're more moist. Naturally, there's natural heat in a living being. Some things, again, Gufa here keeps me like a physical item, an object, some matter. Some of them have much more from the earth, like stones. Therefore, they have much more dryness. So a stone is much more dry than a human, much more cold than a human. Excuse me. All right, much more dry. Actually, he should point out Yavish. Yeah, sorry. So what's unique about people or about living things? They have their own. They generate their own heat. Stones are unique, he said, because they're ultimately dry. Hence the term trying to squeeze the water from a rock, right? Yeah. Sometimes Yalva has different types of things that are more naturally warm than other things. Right? Nickel is very cold naturally, I think, or copper is very cold naturally. You have some things that are more things that are more dry than others. Some of them all you see is coldness. Some all you see is moisture. Some of them you see that they're cold and dry together. Equally, or cold and moist together equally. I'm not sure what's an example of that, but okay. That depends on why are some things actually more cold than others, moist than others, hot than others. What's the main ingredient? Is it Eish, Ruach, Mayim Afer? How much? And based on that whole mixture, that's what we have this whole thing. So therefore, Yeroy Maisa, so you say if you go for Yeroy, that's going to be the nature of the thing of this whole mixture, right? More than the others say this. Good. Anything made up these four you say, which is basically everything in the earth. It's going to eventually decompose.
You skipped a few days,
Halacha Beis at the end.
no.
I don't think I did.
Or maybe I missed. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I got lost.
Okay, Halacha Gimel. Chacham Mechum Rabbi says, anything of these four, you say this, these four elements, the Hemunif for the Sefer, ultimately is going to separate, decompose back to its source at the end. Yeshu Nifada Achayam Cham. Some of them decompose very quickly. Yeshu Nifada Achashamam. Some of them takes many, many years, right? A loaf of bread decomposes much faster than a rock. Yeah. Anything made from them, it's not possible that eventually it's going to decompose and go back to its source in them. Because anything which is created has a beginning, ultimately has an end. It's only the Yagalim, the Abish created them, they should be forever. That's a Chiddush Hashem made for them. Even gold and rubies, which are have very strong, constitution. They're very, very hard. You can't just break them, and it looks like they're in there for thousands of years. Slowly, it's not possible, and eventually it shouldn't become lost. Go back to its fundamentals, its elements. And each one goes back a little bit where it came from originally. Okay, fine. Since everything that's since everything which is ultimately made up of these four goes back to their source, right? But otherwise, by a person that you're from the dust and go back to the dust. You should say offer dasha because the person's body is from all four. You should offer a person majority is from offer. That's where the majority of the body comes from. Some argue the Rambam on this, and they say no, it's a majority water. If a Hadaya person is mostly water, 70% of your body is water. The Rambam means the ikar, the most strongest, not the physical amount of the body is talking more water. But what is the fundamental, most important, strongest, qualitative in the body? It's offer. And even though we said before, Benigaya animals, they're living things that there's. That the main Yesod is Eish, Haraya people, and all living things have a natural heat, the body. Okay, but again, that's in terms of constitution, in terms of quantity. In terms of quality, the koyach is the offer. That's the strongest, presentation in the body. It's not immediately when it decomposes, it goes to these four immediately. It becomes a piece of bread. It becomes mold first. Then it becomes this, whatever. It becomes a lot of things first. The whole mix of shulchan offer changes over time. That thing, another thing. Ultimately, it's going to go back to its four elements. Everything is constantly going back to its source. But then from there comes new things in terms of how the world works. So it's a whole cycle that it goes on forever. Good. The whole concept of decomposition, of rotting, of things, decomposing. That's what this is. This is the whole process. Even a rock, slowly the molecules shift, they move, they become other things, and everything changes. These four Yesodis themselves, they also change somewhat. Constantly. Not only part of them, not all of them, because it's possible to lose one of Yesodis, but they're always kind of like, shifting back and forth. Case of example. Part of the earth, which is the highest part close to the water, is the part that's the most, let's say, moist part of the earth, the mud. It changes and it actually transforms into water. The part of the water which is closest to the surface of the water, that part is the most edel, the most ruchnistic, and it changes. Right, it becomes steam, becomes mist. It becomes air, it becomes part of the atmosphere. The part of the ruach, the highest part, is the most edel part. It changes, it becomes actually part of Yesod Heish. The part which is the lowest part of the fire is the most coarse or grub part of the fire. Changes, it becomes actually part of the low Yesod of ruach. Some part of the ruach, the part close to the water, is the most coarse, and it changes and it becomes part of the water. The water becomes the part of the water closest to the earth, changes and becomes part of the earth. We call this mud, basically. Good. That you have a concept also by a person, the nefesh, the shama, the most grubby part of the neshama actually can change in part of the chaymer ruchni. Okay. This happens very slow over time. Not pshat, the whole entire thing will change, that all of the element of water will change and become ruach. Or the entire ruach will become eish. It's not possible that one of these say this become totally nullified. Some of this ruach becomes eish, but some of the eish becomes ruach. It goes back and forth. So always, and each one to its fellow is going to be change and sharing between all four of them. It goes back and forth, but never will you lose one of the four Yesodis. This whole thing, what causes the four Yesodis to change one to the other? That's because the Galgal, which is the lowest one, which is right on top of the Galgal, has the four Yesodis, as you said, the lowest of the 9 Galgalim. It rotates, and its rotation causes this whole thing to happen. I think the last time we said get this year, I said it was the one on the outside that turns everything. But apparently the shot is no, it's the lowest one, the one closest to Yeshua Offer. Because of its rotation around them, it causes the four of them to come together. And that's going. That causes the four of them also to mix and create these different ingredients that create the things that exist on the earth of people, nefesh chaya, living animals, right, vegetation, stones, and metal. And the Abishah gives every single matter to really its proper form, its proper energy that gives its nature. Through the 10th malach, lowest malach, which is one called Ishim. That's the one that gives its nature, right? So you have this type. You have example. Snapshot is a snapshot. For example, snapshot that you have. Just the same ingredient, same form, same physical thing, and then the Suda is what changes this to be an apple, and this changes to be a rock. No, it's a different type of physical thing. That's a keli for that type of spiritual energy, for that type of Suda. And the 10th level, the Malach Ishim, the Malachim of that level, they're the ones who do this. Yeah. And it says in the Sfarim that based on every single different type of thing that exists in the universe, because the different type of ingredients, these four Yesodis, each one has their own malach of level of Isha that gives it its type of nature. Okay. Chazal called the Sarah Shel Olam. All right, in other places. A human being can't see with her eyes a form without the tzura. Anytime you see something, it has a tzura, it has a nature of some sort. It has an apple as its nature, its tava, its taste, its color, it's whatever it is about it, that besides a physical part you can touch, right? And the rock has its form, its nature, its tzura. So if you're seeing a chaymer, there's a tzura there, you can't see a chaymer without tzura. It's just pure matter without form is not shaykh for human being to see. And fakir, obviously, you can't see a tzur without a good. You can't see a malach, which is just matter without a form without matter. It's in a person's mind, a person's heart, a person's imagination. He's able to differentiate between the concept of, let's say, this item there's a form and there's a tzur, there's a matter to it. There's a matter and there's a form as well, an energy to it. You can be aware that it's comprised of both. You can comprehend that there's a concept of guf, that their guf is the mechuber of the four Yesodis, all the four Yesodis. Even you can't see the four Yesodis in the item, you can understand it. The yesh gufim, the gufim. They have some type of gufim that their form is pashut, and there are no other that their matter is pashut. It doesn't have other types of matter. So, Marshall, if you say this, each one is only its own type of unique matter that's mixed with the unique tzura it has, which gives it that it's not comprised of the other four. So that's something you can only comprehend in your mind. You can't actually see it with your eye. And the type of form which has no matter, which is the malachim. You can't see with your eyes. You can see with the eye of your heart and your imagination. Your seichel, they're known. Just so we know about Hashem, we can't see him. About malachim, we can't see them. The soul of everything, the life of everything, even when it comes to animals, right? Like you have the nature of it. Okay, the fact that it's alive and not dead is one thing, but the nature, the teva of the ox is even the teva of a polar bear, right? That thing, that nefesh is its nature, is its tzura, just like Hashem gave it. So physical items, the tzura is the shape, the color, the whole thing that makes it just non-chaos matter. But when it comes to things that are alive, it's teva, that's its tzura that Hashem gave it. Yeah. Makes it a minute. Why is it a polar bear and a sure a different species? It's not two living things. No, the whole different species. It's teva is different. But that's the same. It's fine. Yeah. which makes animals look all different than plants. Good. The extra das that is found by a person's nefesh. Okay, so disclaimer. We use terms nefesh, ruach, neshama in Chassidus very different than the Rambam is over here. So it's very, very different in fact. And also in the Rambam's lexicon, you don't really have nefesh elokis. The Rambam is not machal between the neshama, the soul of a Jew versus a non-Jew, right? It's one type of nefesh. So basically, we'll explain a little bit as best as we can, as best I understand. But it's just be aware these terms are different than we're familiar with them from Chassidus. The extra ability, the intelligence, the awareness that a person's soul has, that is the tzura of a human. So let's touch this like this. There's two ways to understand this. Meaning, if he's of sound mind, a person that has a car accident and had traumatic brain damage, they can't think like a person. But a person has a working mind, his ability to think like a human, unique way that humans think, to think abstractly, to the kinds of the kind of way animals, even the smartest animals can't think. The idea of wanting to have a purpose in life, right? Animals don't care about having a purpose, even the smartest animals, right? That's what makes a human being unique. Another way to teach this is that so according to that shot, you're born with this. You're born with it. That's the ability to develop. When the brain develops, the human being automatically has that ability. The other shot is Tzuras Adam Hashalom B'daita. The Ram is talking about a tzura that you get by working on yourself to understand things. It's not automatic. That's what other people understand. The comprehension you achieve as a person to understand abstract things, specifically on the Rambam, understand Hashem. That's the tzura that you get. So it's really the potential Hashem gives you. That's two ways of saying the Rambam. Is this tzura by default, or is it talking about the mind that you get through thinking? So, in other words, is the tzura of a person the fact that a human being can think, or is it what happens to you when you choose to think? And there's two ways to look at the Rambam. Al-Pi are both true, because you automatically have a neshama, but the impact it has on you when you work on yourself and you internalize it, that's a higher level of tzura. Okay. Al tzura is you regarding this tzura, this form. Not never the Torah says, somebody say, let's make a man in our form, in our image. Meaning, right, that our form is that the ability to think intelligently, right? And kedusenu, our demus are that we have a certain the way we see our picture, so to speak, similar to the malachim in the sense we recognize Hashem. That we threw, and again, according to some pshat, automatically, or tiyaloi through your own efforts, through thinking. The ability to comprehend things which don't have a form. The smartest animal, smartest ape, can comprehend that. Imagine something that's not here in the room, a concept, right? But a person has the ability to do that, like malachim, for example. Right? Think about the malachim. To the point that you become similar to them in the ability to think about things you can't actually touch. We're not talking about this sort of that it's the image of a person, of his mouth, nose, and his cheeks, or sharishim, maguf, the other parts, as to how the body is shaped. That's called Torah. Your was the fast Torah, right? Shape of the face, shape of the body. But that's called Torah. That word means Torah. Taka true when it comes to a rock, the tzura is part of the shape is part of the tzura. By a human, that's called Torah. It's also not the nefesh. Even an animal has a life. In fact, it's alive. A certain teva. The fact that a human being is alive, they could eat and drink, can be hungry, be thirsty, it can give birth, it can feel, it can be hate, love, and feel the emotions, whatever. And think. And again, what I'm saying over here, that it sounds like that the fact that you can think is not the tzura. Some say it is the tzura. So here the Rambam sounds like the Rambam saying that even the fact that you can think it's not the tzura is what happens to you when you choose to think about spiritual things. Then you think about what to have for lunch today: peanut butter, or jelly, or both, or maybe cream cheese. That's what I'm talking about. But the mahader is all this is part of the nefesh. That's not the tzura. Eladeya she tzuras hanefesh. The day of the intelligence, which is the tzura of the nefesh. But that's what the pasuk says. When it says make a man in our form, in our image, that's where it's saying that make a person who has the ability to have this kind of form. So those who say we have it, we're born with it, is the potential to have seichel that a human being has. That's the tzura. You work on it, it's very nice, but you have it automatically. How do they say pshat? And the Rambam says in mahader that the word mahader, the ability to think, is not the tzura. So they say they'll say pshat that the Rambam mahader means like not thinking intelligently, like the fact that I'm conscious and if I can think and I can know that there's a loud noise, I get scared. That's called also hid her, if you will. It's not called deya though. Okay. Many times this too is called nefesh. In other words, a contrast to the nefesh that we said before, which is the nature of an animal to be alive, it's tava. So that's by a person, the nefesh is very different. So sometimes it's called nefesh in the pasuk. You have the pasuk, for example, v'nefesh adeni, right? So it's called these lashonos. You have to be careful. Different names. It says in the Sfarim, there's 10 different names for the soul that are in Tanakh. You shouldn't make a mistake. Each name, you learn its content, right? So the term nefesh, for example, is very different by a person than it is used by an animal. Yeah. Yeah, fine. This form of a person, the fact that a human being has the ability to think. This is what we might call in Chassidus language the nefesh ha-sichlis, not the nefesh ha-kiss, mind you. Not the nefesh ha-hamas, nefesh ha-sichlis. What makes a human being different than an animal? The ability to think abstractly, to wonder what your purpose is. Intelligence, yeah. But human intelligence, yeah. So it's not comprised of the four Yesodis that they're going to say that's eventually decomposed back to them. Nor does it come from the neshama, which the Rambam's expression, the word neshama, is not. It means what we call nefesh bahamas. Just the natural tendency of the fact that there's a person alive and they can have a survival instinct and be afraid of getting killed. That's not and wanting to survive, right? And even wanting to connect to someone else, right? All that is things animals also do. So it's not from there actually in the sense that it needs the neshama to exist. So, for example, right, that part of the person, the survival instinct that needs to just live the way an animal does, just the fact that if you're hungry, you're aware of it, etc. That part similar to an animal that only really exists once it comes into the body. It doesn't exist by itself. Just like the tzura of a rock doesn't exist until it comes into the rock. Then you have a tzura in a rock. So in the chaymer of the rock, until you have an actual body for this life force to come into, doesn't really exist. So that's what the neshama is. However, the nefesh is different. Now, it's a special given from Hashem from Shemayim. Everything comes from Hashem, obviously, but there's a special thing Hashem gives that's different than everything else. Therefore, when the person's form, the physical body decomposes, it goes backwards for Yesodis when a person passes away. And the neshama was really just there to make the body that it's alive and not dead, just like a dog is alive and not dead. Because this neshama, as we're calling it, doesn't exist independent of the body. It only exists in the body of a person when the person is in the body is alive. So that's true that when the person passes away, that life force, the neshama as we're calling it, which a human has is similar to every other mammal, every other animal, that ceases to exist when the body ceases to live. This body ceases to exist. Or I guess to a certain extent it exists when the body exists, but the person no longer alive. It also exists to a certain extent. But when the body fully decomposes, it totally ceases to exist. And when the person passes away, there's a certain surah to the shape of the body, like a rock at least. So to an extent, the neshama is still there, but when it decomposes, it's totally non-existent. Just like when a dog dies, it's non-existent. So, however, when that happens, this unique tzura, the fact that a person's born with the ability to think, or as another pshat is what a person achieves through his own efforts of thinking and understanding Hashem, that does not cease to exist. It doesn't need a neshama. It doesn't need a body that's alive. Again, the word neshama here is not very different than again. It's like we call it Hamas. It doesn't need a neshama. And it only exists like a surah with the goyim, only with the goyim. This surah understands the abstract concepts that is separated from matter. It understands and knows Hashem. The Medes Elohim exists forever. So Hashem said in His wisdom in Koheles, that the person returns to the earth, as it was. But however, the ruach, the person's neshama, the person's tzura, what we call the neshama usually, but here called the nefesh, right? Goes back to Hashem who gave it, Hashem from where it came from. Okay, so what we call the nefesh Elokis is not really discussed here. We call the nefesh hasichlis, the Rambam calls nefesh. What we call nefesh bahamis, the Rambam calls neshama. Now, why is this Perek Gimel and Perek Dalet? What's this all about? Why do you have to know this? I mean, it's nice. Says the Ram. All the evidence in this concept. It's like a drop in the bucket. And Ma'aseh Merkava, the Ram says that he's telling you it's like a drop in the ocean. Ma'aseh Merkava is like an ocean. Ma'aseh Bereishis is not. It's like a bucket. It's also compared to it's bigger than a drop, but it's not the same. Yeah. However, it's not as deep as the concept of the first and second parak, which is Ma'aseh Merkava. Beer called because Ma'aseh Bereshis is the concept of how Chaymer and Tzura comes together, how format comes together. Ma'aseh Bereshis, Ma'aseh Merkava, is only Tzura really, not the concept of great. It's only spiritual, only wickedness. Beer called Ma'aseh Bereshis. The first two paragraphs of Ma'aseh Merkava, the parak Gimel and Daled, that's what's called Ma'aseh Bereshis. According to the Rambam, that is the concept of Ma'aseh Bereshis. Even though the truth is, this parak we talked about, person's at the soul after they pass away, the eternal soul, that's the Chor Ma'aseh Merkava, not Ma'aseh Bereshis. But okay, and generally speaking, the whole concept here is the concept of Ma'aseh Bereshis. That's how the Rambam defines it too. Other Rishonim disagree with the Rambam as what it means in the Gemara Chagig over there, but this is how the Rambam defines it. Ma'aseh Merkava is anything ruchnius that doesn't have a matter, just spiritual, just form, just form. Ma'aseh Bereshis is form and matter together. The early Chacham of the Mishnah said, these things, not just Ma'aseh Merkava, but even this also, you don't darshan it publicly. One person, so you can teach him. It doesn't have to be as exalted as the person who qualifies for Ma'aseh Merkava, but he still has to be a candidate. What's the difference between the Ma'aseh Merkava or Ma'aseh Bereshis? After all, you're not allowed to teach him to any. You can't give publicly lectures to either. Right? That's why only one person came this year. You can't only one person came. That Ma'aseh Merkava, which is Perek Gimel, which is Kabbalah things, that you only teach only one person. Even that one person, he has to be somebody who you see as a candidate, who understands these things. He has the ability to think abstractly. He's not going to think like fadreit. Teaching the basic concepts. Ma'aseh Bereshis, if you see somebody you think you could make him a candidate, you're allowed to teach him. It's okay. You tell him everything, these things. Wherever you try to understand, you could teach him. But why teach it publicly? If you could teach the people, the fee because not everyone has to understand these things well. You have to be one-on-one. So if he has a question, he can ask you, and this way he's not going to start thinking and making all kinds of mistakes. You teach it publicly to people. If it's not true that it's not such a big deal, you don't have to be a candidate. You can teach it to people who are not candidates. But if you teach them more than one person at a time, he might not ask. He's going to think you said something. He's going to start thinking and misunderstanding it, and it's going to impact his faith in Hashem. So in order to keep things pure, you have to teach to one person. So this way, if he has a question, he'll ask you. Now, why is this negate? When a person contemplates these things, he sees the greatness of creation, from the angels and the spheres and humans, etc. He sees Hashem's wisdom. In all the forms and all of the creations, certain things that are just form like the malachim, and Barim are things that are also matter like in physical things. He's going to have this increased love to Hashem. Hashem called the Makam because everywhere you go, Hashem is there, the omnipresent. Yeah. But Timson nafsheli, his soul is going to thirst. His flesh will desire to love Hashem. That's in terms of the mitzvah of Abba. We fear it and awed his own lowliness, but the Lusa in his own patheticness, the Kalusa in his own lightness, nothingness. He compares himself to one of the great holy bodies, meaning from the Gagalim or the Malachim. Even the Gagalim are holy. The Chol Shekin La'achem Yatzuris HaTeres and Efros from Gagalim, and certainly from the Gagalim, and certainly when compares himself to one of the Tzuris that don't have a Goyla, meaning the Malachim. They don't have any matter, just form, which is the angels. He'll see himself as a vessel which is full of embarrassment and disgrace, empty, and therefore that's going to give him the ability to have fear of Hashem. These concepts, for prakam, these 5 mitzvahs of knowing Hashem exists, not thinking there's a God besides Hashem. The oneness of Hashem, loving Hashem, fearing Hashem. That's called Pardes, the orchard. Like it says in the Gemara, 4 people went to the Pardes, right? And we call it Pardes because it increases in pleasure. It's not essential staple. It's non-essentials, if you will, but it's extra. Okay, even though the great Chachamim and greatness of great Yidden, like denied was able to understand this incorrectly. From the 4, 3 of them didn't have a good end. One passed away, one didn't become one fire, one went Meshuggah. A person only strong the Pardes, in other words, he dealt with these things, he fills his stomach with flesh, meat and wine. The Rambam says Belechem basu, it's don't have dessert till you have the basic meal. Belechem basu, mitzvahs, knowing the basic of the mitzvahs. This is of course different today, but today we know that for Chassidus, even though these things are basically asher, mutter, regular, nigla, Chum said it's a small matter. The Ma'aseh Mekov is a great matter, and Avaya Rava's Gemara is a small matter. Learn them first because they make a person's mind settled, and he can understand and comprehend the idea of question and answer. They have the great goodness Hashem gave for the purpose of settling the world. People should act normal and holy. Therefore, the world afterwards you can be able to get Elam Haba. Ever can understand them. Every person of the level can comprehend them, and therefore they come first. The Ram starts with them, and he says, "Learn the rest of my sefer," and then when you finish that, then you can go back. You can delve into the whole Ma'aseh Mekov.